They've chosen me to talk about the Dunkles beer. The Dunkles beer is a traditional Bavarian, I beg your pardon? It's a traditional Bavarian beer style, and it's a beer style that I find particularly delicious. So as the craft industries have developed new beer styles, some extinct beer styles have been resurrected. Things like in SAB or ABM's own Hoegaard and Wit died for about 10 years. And a gentleman went to Texas, revived it, and then came back to Belgium and started. So it's able to do that. The industry and the craft around craft can actually develop new beer styles. But the beer styles that remain, and the beer styles that have come through from a long time ago that remain, are obviously delicious and work with the consumer. It's quite a rich beer style. You'll find that the color is quite dark. And if you look at the idea of a beer tasting, you look, smell, taste, decide. The more color something has, the danger is you spend a lot of time admiring it. The more lovely aroma something has, you spend a lot of time with the beer in the glass, smelling it without having the drink. So beers that are dark and beers that are aromatic often are slow drinkers because you take a long time to have the first sip. But should you have the first sip of Dunkles, it falls down just about as fast as the other softer Munich special called a Helles, which is a clear beer or a light beer. Helles literally means like Afrikaans helder, you know. The Dunkles is dark. And the traditional part in the pre-Reinheitsgebot days, before they also had the modern way of roasting malt, all malts were quite dark. And the Munich malt that we're using today is a remnant of that. But the beer is brewed between, say, about 4.5% and 6% alcohol. It's designed to be the dark beer at some of the beer festivals. So it's designed for easy glugging. You will find it in Munich often in 1 liter glasses. In terms of being fermentation forward or malt forward or hop forward, as in most of Bavarian beers, it's decidedly low in bitterness. It's definitely malt forward. This particular one I haven't tasted before, so I'm actually quite keen to get stuck into it. But I'll say the brewer is actually Bavarian. I'd like to see what they've done. In terms of the malt forward, some of the missing hop, there's a notional bitterness from some of the slight roast on the malt which comes through, which balances. So the beer needs to be nicely balanced. And you'll find that it drinks and swallows easily. And you'll find that most people will be having this with some of the traditional Bavarian fare. Not so much the Weisswurst, which is the boiled sausage, the veal sausage, but most of the other Franconian and Bavarian specialty sausages they'll be having with this. So it's quite rich. If you go to Franken or Franconia, this will often accompany things like oxenbraten, which will be like a roast ox or ox on the spit kind of stuff. The guys are quite serious about their food there. But I think it's maybe a time for us to get a little bit more serious about the tasting of it. So we're going to go to that table now. I'd like to pour a little bit. I'll show you how we will pour and look at it and smell it and taste it. And there's enough for us on 5 or 6 there amongst us. We can have the same group 4 times. There's some more beer coming. That we can maybe just glug the last 40 mils of it. I want you to feel it because it's very nice. There's quite a bit of what they call smoke or Rauch brewing in Bavaria. Now and then the Munich malt, which they still make to the old spec, there's almost a hint of spice and almost a hint of smoke, but don't confuse it with a proper smoked beer, which they also make in Franconia. It's not going to be the same. And I see you guys have all got a glass. I don't have a glass. I think let's go this side and let's have a look. No, I think... okay, folks, I think we're also just going to show you what the score sheet looks like. As Lucy was saying earlier, this is not a dumbed down, but it's certainly like a précis or a more concise version of the BJCP. We tend to look at a tasting in the same way that you would be given the beer and you'd look at the beer. So we look, smell, taste, decide in that order. I'd also like to, in that last sip we have, which we're going to glug, I want you to try and give me some words and how you feel and what the mouthfeel is. English, which will unfortunately or fortunately be the lingua franca here now, has not got all the lovely words that some of our Latin principles have got for expressing mouthfeel and how one feels. Because the memorableness of a beer is the session. And the session is driven by drinkability, not by taste. So it's actually quite interesting how beer tastings work. They can be quite aggressive, that you win a tasting, but tastings don't guarantee you sales. But when you find that you enjoy a beer and you sit for a long time and enjoy that beer, the memory of that occasion drives you to buy that beer the next time. And it might not have won a tasting competition. So one of the big holy grails of the modern tasting game is to try and find a way to convert taste scores to saleability of a beer. And that is a little bit of a holy grail. Okay, on the tasting form, you'll see here, this 12 for aroma, 3 for appearance. I'd actually rather do the appearance first when we pour this. Then aroma and flavor, some of that actually overlaps. Flavor is also the taste. Then mouthfeel. Clearly on the taste, it's going to be the sweet and the bitter and those kind of crude things, but there's also a lot of flavor involved in that. Mouthfeel, you see, is 5 points. Mouthfeel should be 25 points because that's actually what's going to drive what the saleability of the beer is going to be. Overall, we find that with the 5 and the 10 of overall impression and mouthfeel, we tend to try and form an impression of how the consumer would react to the product. But clearly, only beers, if we have a big beer tasting and you have 2 or 3 sessions with a beer, in the first session we throw away beers that are really not going to make it. And in the second table, we push forward the beers to the final table based on taste. So luckily, only good tasting beers get to the final table, but at the final table we should be having more mouthfeel and overall impression as the arbitration, and it's often not the case. Okay, so guys, let's open these ones here. Do I have a glass? Okay. All right. I'm not sure how they open. They are reasonably cold. They shouldn't pop or do anything silly. Okay, let's just have a little bit of a go here. I've never had this one before. Oh, look at that color. I wonder if they're not adding a small amount of base malt as well as Munich. I mean, 100% Munich, can they do that? Are these Dunkles ever 100% Munich malt? Oh, yeah. Okay. Folks, this will be about enough. This should be enough. Let's just make sure that those cans can last, and I know for the next crowd as well it'll work. So folks, just quickly on the appearance, you'll find that, and this is common in Munich, in the home of this beer as well, that the foam is slightly stained, the color of the malt and the color of the beer. It's not universally the case. Think of something like Guinness in a can. The foam can be quite white, even though it comes from, but if you know SAB's Castle Malt Stout and sometimes Guinness poured from the draft, there is this natural tanning of the foam. It's all good. This is quite a slim glass. And being a slim glass, the beer's quite cold. Just wipe off a little bit of the condensation. You will find that there's a reasonable translucence on the beer. I'm seeing quite a bit of clarity on some of the products. This one of mine's a little bit cloudy, or not. But this glass is quite thin. If you imagine this going into a 1 liter mug at the Oktoberfest, the beer would look decidedly darker because the column is much thicker. And they're also quite rough with the pour there, so you'll find the top third of the beer is foam, but it's a very wet foam. If you let that glass stand for a while, more than half of that foam is actually beer, and the beer rises, not to the top, but it rises up quite considerably. So I can't see beading really in mine, but I see some of the beers look a little bit brighter than mine. This one looks a bit brighter. Just want to see. Yeah, some of these are actually quite clear. I might have one that's just got a bit of cold turbidity and haze as possible. Okay, so folks, I'm going to ask you now to please engage your personal brain and start telling me what you smell. This is going to be a mixture of the base notes of flavor and the top notes of aroma. Can you smell something there? Divine is lovely. It means like spiritual and godlike. But can you be more specific? Which God? There's almost a hint of spice on here. Yeah, like a molasses, almost treacle kind of bottom to it, okay? Now, folks, remember I said if you've got a beer that smells a lot, that it hinders and slows down the drinking. But if a beer has got a very nice aroma, you get to the mouthfeel quicker. If a beer's got an intriguing kind of an aroma that you sort of spend a lot of time contemplating, that will delay the taste even longer, but this one's much easier to get to the mouth. Almost like a toffee, but not the sweet toffee, not that. Oh man, creme brulee. So I'm hearing words like creme brulee and toffee and molasses. Caramel. Okay. tiramisu. So now what we're doing, we're tasting with color and tasting with experience. That will settle a lot of it. So very positive. It's cold. It's chocolate and soft and fluffy. All those nice things. That's a lovely word for the beer. Okay, I think just if you've had anything else, just clean the mouth out with a bit of the beer. Oh man, Imkes, we don't often praise other brewers, but we never knock them. But this is praiseworthy. Oh man, oh this is really lovely. Okay, so this was just a small sip. I'd like to try a little experiment with you. Maybe who of you are willing to participate and take the biggest sip that you can hold for 5 seconds? And then we all swallow together. Would that be okay? Please follow. I'm going to take the biggest sip. I'm going to hold it for 5 seconds. This is a memorable product. You can find the mouthfeel. There'll be a theater on the palate. There'll be a grip on the palate. You'll feel it going down. You'll still have the flavor on the tongue, and the retronasal reburp will be beautiful. So this beer is reasonably complex. Complex beers tend to drink a little slower, but when the complexity is light, it can be alluring. Now, there's not much in the larger brewers in South Africa. There's not much on this kind of line available, so the craft guys are making much more of this. If we had a much bigger German community, one of the smaller craft guys could even mainline on a product like this. But if you go to Blumenau, that southern part of Brazil, where there are lots of German people, this will be quite available in some of the smaller and medium-sized breweries. But this is the traditional beer style. So when the Zedelmeier family in the 1870s started brewing special beers for the Oktoberfest, some of the popularity of Dunkles dropped in Munich as the Helles started taking over, and the Oktoberfest style and the Helles became more common in the cities. But in the rural areas, this is the dominant beer in Bavaria. And in fact, in southern Bavaria, this and some of the Weizen beers, or the spicy German southern Bavarian wheat beers, would dominate. So in the urban centers, more of the Helles is now served with the light lager malt that is made in Bavaria and other parts of Germany. But this is the traditional. I would say probably now, probably about 55% of Bavarian beers, probably Helles, and about 45% Dunkel, because the rural areas are just not as populated as, say, Munich and Augsburg and the big cities. But you can see why this goes with food. Extremely food friendly. I would never put this on the dessert side, but I would have this from a soup to right to the end, except for the final dessert. I wouldn't do this with cheese. I would have other stuff the Bavarians are famous for with cheese. But this beer is delicious. It's light and complex. So complexity is not the want of a big beer only. You can have lightness and complexity. I find this beer quite intriguing. As I'm talking to you now, that swallow about two minutes ago, I can still feel that feel. Now, it's remarkable that you can have a product that can last that long, which means it drives sessionability. You can actually have a lovely sip of this, put the beer down, and chat to your mate for 5 minutes, and then get back to your beer. Where some of the very light and easy drinking beers, you tend to do this all the time on your elbows in your neighbor's face. This one, I think, is actually beautiful. I think anything with a little bit of roast on it. I wouldn't say have goose that's very fatty with this, but I suppose it would still work. I'd like this to have more effervescence to cut the fat or something like that. But this is delicious, this product. Whereas this dark color, you'd often say, wow, this is going to be a heavy beer. I'm probably not going to have more than half of the can. You could easily have a can. If you're thirsty, you drink it just almost as easy as one of the lighter beers. Anybody having Dunkles for the first time? Don't be shy. If you go to Munich, would you have one? They come in a liter at the beer gardens. I don't know what Imke's got written there. Probably close. Doesn't taste too big. 5%. Okay, that's right. That's midstream. That will be quite a common. My favorite one of these Yeah, they're often closer. So during in Munich, my favorite one happens to be the one from Hofbräu. So you go to Hofbräu House and you're thinking you're going to have the Helles, but that's great. But I prefer theirs. But there are some just outside. So there's an Altbayerische one from Eyinger in the south, just the south of Munich. That's also nice and rich. And in Franconia, which is on the Main River, on the north of Bavaria, they've got some slightly stronger, slightly darker versions. And they've got lots of farm brewery tour routes and lots of small craft breweries. In fact, some of the densest craft breweries are actually in the Franconia area. Almost every brewer makes one of these, and they are, by all intents, absolutely delightful. And there's actually a lot of brewing routes there in that part of the world. Yeah. Anybody find this particularly to their liking? Why is it to your liking? So what's... But isn't that actually quite amazing that the IPAs, which have been almost got a cult status, that there is a foil, and it's not the only kind, but this is clearly a foil for them. Yeah. Anybody not like it? Please don't be shy. You'll find that somebody who doesn't like it will not like it for the very same reason that your neighbor likes it, because preference must come into these things. Yeah. 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 And it's that interplay where it's perceived to be sweet, but it's actually dry. Yeah. Wonderful. This gentleman is deliberately and cleverly mixing taste and mouthfeel. You watch his hand. Memorable beers get past table one on taste, and they survive in your memory on mouthfeel. You've got the mouthfeel. And ladies are better at getting mouthfeel and better at and more willing to express mouthfeel than gents are. You are a liberated man. I consider myself liberated as well because I love the mouthfeel aspect of beer. And what would you see with the claw she made with her hand? No. That is the lizard brain. You do that when you feel something. It's part of our... I notice it because I deliberately watch it for people. You were doing this with your hand. As soon as you bring your hand to your mouth with a claw, you are saying, I'm feeling it here. And that's exactly what ladies are better at. You did it there. You didn't even... That's fantastic. That's really nice. Yeah, I hammer. Okay. Folks, we've got 5 minutes, but please, question time. Would this style become mainstream in South Africa? Probably a little bit complex for the hot weather times. I'm actually feeling it, yeah, with the lights and stuff. Yeah, so... Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the guys that usually come to the brewery don't really drink much of the dark beers. But then we played around once. We made a white stout, which is quite a debatable style of beer. And people who came, especially ladies, we said, okay, this is what a stout really tastes like, you know. So without the color, you know. And they enjoyed it. We literally sold 10 kegs of that thing in 3 weeks, and mostly to ladies, mostly to beer beginners, basically, people who've never drank much beer or thing, or they drink occasionally a light lager and stuff like that. So the challenge is many people judge beer in this country with the appearance. Once they see it dark, everyone is like, oh, your beer is so strong. And then in the mind, they already have told themselves this thing is too strong, it's also bitter and everything. But I think we need a bit of more education, more ways of getting people to taste beer, even if it means making people taste a beer in the darkness or something, or blindfolded, and then they say what they think. You will find out that their opinions, without seeing it, they usually differ from when they see it. You know, yeah.
This beer, do you drink it cold or at room temperature? Does the taste differ?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, the taste will definitely differ, but I would say at least start off at our South African fridge cold. So get it around 2 or 3, because it's very quickly going to warm up if should it need to be warmer. You obviously can't start off at 8 and then hope for it to get cold. So I would still say this product is designed. In Munich, we'd be drinking it in the big glass at about 4 degrees. So not the ice cold that we would like out of some of our ice cold beers that we serve. In South Africa, it's always hot. The Oktoberfest is late September in Munich, where some of the evenings are getting cooler already. So 4 degrees goes well. So yeah, but I've seen people nurse a large glass for about 15 minutes on the table, at which stage some of the beer is about 6 degrees. So this one can take slightly elevated temperatures. But a lighter lager, you want it as cold as possible. The brewer brews it for the grip you get from the right temperature. This one's got other complexity where you don't need cold to accentuate it. You want a little bit of elevation, but not 8 or 10. So it's not the old English warm ale kind of idea, not at all. Yeah. Okay, so folks, just quickly in summary, when we have things like Oktoberfest festivals, which used to be quite big before COVID, the German school used to do, SEB Summers used to, via some of our craft guys, we used to do some contract brewing and make a few kegs. I would say this would go very well in context. At this lady Imke Papa's brewery, the Brauhaus am Damm, there's every expectation that it's a German-centered brewery. Most of the visitors would be German or German interested, and they would clearly be buying this product more often, and some of the foods in these establishments are set up for these beers. So this is a very beer food friendly. So if I, and SAB, I'm given carte blanche, not to support competitors, but we don't see craft guys as competitors, we see them as our friends. I would happily, if we didn't have a Dunkel and we needed to show off a Dunkel, I would happily use a product like this. Because in that way we support a beer culture, and just like we're doing here, we support a beer culture, we only grow the idea. In fact, you said more education, that drives the education. And let me tell you something we've noticed from what happens here and at other stuff where SAB and other guys have been involved. When we started, when the craft brewing really started up, and I think some of you guys will remember, we had some festivals in Cape Town where the craft guys asked us to please sell their beers with power. And I did, 1 or 2 guys at Dunkler, so we did it because it's very good for us if we don't make this beer style to learn and to understand. I've been very fortunate to go to Munich a few times, so I know this backwards. In fact, Jana, my colleague, went a month or so ago, and she had a few of these as well. It's delicious, and it's wonderful to be able to have, especially in its context. You're not going to have a mass of this here unless you really drive a context. Whereas in Munich, you get this vur feeling, you're in that vibe, this goes down singing anthems. I'm not sure what Imke does when she packages, but in Munich, you will have at least 6 months on the bottles, if not more. Probably 12 months, but it never lasts that long, never needs to last that long. So, yeah. But every beer style, except some of the bottle-conditioned examples from Belgium, you want to have it as fresh as possible, even though it lasts well. So the lasting is a safety issue. The best by means, it's still okay afterwards, but we believe it'll be great up to that date. But there's no point in checking to see how long something lasts. If you're watching the date, drink it. Okay, any more questions? We're just about ready, folks, on time.